I want to talk today about our vision for our lives, okay? Because mostly, uh, you know, people who don't grow up with the Dharma or don't know anything about the Dharma or who don't have a spiritual practice, um, a deep spiritual practice, uh, then the life is all about pleasure, getting as much pleasure as you can, fending off threats, displeasure, suffering, and that's about it. Yeah, and so for people uh, who don't have a strong ethical character, they'll do this by any means possible. For people who have some kind of ethical notions, they can be secular ethics or religious ethics, then they're still aiming for pleasure and to fend off suffering, but in an ethical way without harming anybody else. Okay? In Buddhism, we're looking beyond this life, okay? And we have a much different vision of what our life is about, okay? So the normal vision, as society teaches us, is I'm little old me, and I just got to make myself look good in front of other people and keep my faults and weaknesses hidden, because if they come out, then people will criticize me and I won't have a very good reputation. Uh, and make a lot of money and be successful in the eyes of my family, or be successful in whatever way I define success. Maybe it's climbing up the ladder in our career, getting more responsibility, higher posts, better salaries, more recognition by society, getting elected to something. These are kind of the normal goals people have, and how they see their lives and what they see themselves as capable of. Okay? So, from a Buddhist viewpoint, this is a very limited view of our capability and our nature as human beings. Okay? When you get into the Dharma, you hear talk of the Buddha nature or Buddha potential that each of us have, but in the very nature of the mind, the potential to become a fully awakened being. Okay, in other words, somebody who is free from all the defilements like anger and greed and confusion and arrogance and um, deception and lack of integrity and all the other things that bog us down. We actually have the potential to free ourselves from those. And we also have the potential to develop our good qualities limitlessly. In other words, and when you say it, it sounds easy to say, but when you think about it, it's quite profound. Being able to look at any sentient being and having our automatic reaction be one of kindness and wanting them to be happy and not suffer. Okay, can you imagine yourself looking at any sentient being and feeling that, including all the people who have harmed you in your life? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of astounding to think that we have that ability to let go of all of our grudges, all of our anger, all of the fear and anxiety, and just have this total open heart towards others, and to have a mind that sees things in a realistic way without all the exaggeration and unrealistic expectations and so on. Because we're so used to our ignorance, anger, and greed. We're so used to being frustrated and upset that it's, you know, who has ever told us that it's possible to live without these kinds of emotions and to instead create the virtuous ones limitlessly? You know, we certainly didn't learn that in school. Yeah. Our parents didn't teach it to us. Society as a whole doesn't think of us in that way. And so when we come into Buddhism and we have this very expansive view of human potential and what we can become, we often are kind of flabbergasted and like, really? Are you sure this isn't hype? You know, really? I don't think I can really be like that. Yeah, because we're so ingrained with what one of my teachers calls a poor quality view of ourselves. You know, that's so entrenched in our mind that we can't imagine anything other than that. And so we can't imagine the Buddha looking at us with with acceptance and compassion. Okay, we think the Buddha's going to look at us like we look at ourselves with this hypercritical mind. Are you doing it right? Are you sure you're doing it right? Are you sure? Actually, this doesn't make sense. You're really kind of a jerk. You're covering it up, but just don't let anybody see all your rotten qualities. Okay, and we think that the Buddha's going to look at us that way. And then you do this retreat and you're visualizing the Buddha in the space in front. Yeah, and the Buddha's not looking at you that way, although you might try and make him look at you that way because you're so accustomed to it. But just try letting the Buddha look at you with acceptance and compassion. Try imagining the Buddha just with his face being completely calm. You know, I mean, imagine that, somebody who's completely calm and satisfied. Where have you ever met anybody like that? You know, in our society, satisfaction means you're lazy. It means you're not producing enough. You're not a go-getter. Okay? In Buddhism, satisfaction means that you're a together person. Okay? That you're not, you know, dreaming up all sorts of things to be fearful and anxious and competitive and jealous and arrogant about. Okay? So in your meditation, really, when you're visualizing the Buddha all during it, really think of the expression on the Buddha's face, and you see yourself as worthy of being looked at with acceptance and compassion. Yeah. And try and look at yourself that way, and then try and look at others that way. So when your mind starts judging people, yeah, in the Vajrasattva retreat, for those of you who were here, we talked about the judgmental critical mind. Yeah, if your mind starts on that, snap it out of that and go, okay, I'm going to look at all these beings the way the Buddha does, with acceptance and compassion. And I'm going to stop my whole opinion factory about who they are and how they should be and how they aren't what they should be, and they should be this and that because that's what I want them to be. And anyway, whatever I want somebody to be is what they should be, regardless of what they want to be. Okay? So we're dropping all of that nonsense. Okay? So try that in your meditation. The Buddha's looking at you that way, and then you look at others that way. And it's a very good practice to do, not just on the cushion, but especially during the break time. Because the break time is when the critical, judgmental mind really, has a festival, looking at everybody and judging what they're doing. Yeah. And it makes you totally miserable, and it'll make you feel alienated from the whole group. So it's not that the group doesn't like you, it's that you make yourself unlikable, you know? Even though people like you, you go, well, I don't like them. I mean, they're all a bunch of idiots. I'm the great one. But then at other times, I'm the idiot and they're the great ones. And then, of course, you get totally confused. So drop the whole thing, stop the comparison with others and just, rest the mind, acceptance of what is, compassion, and knowing that people have potential and knowing that you have potential. And this is all within our reach if we exert the energy and the effort. Okay?